Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Roll with Advantage. So recently, I've been on a pretty big Game of Thrones kick. I just finished watching A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms recently. If you haven't watched it, by the way, it's super good, and I heavily recommend it to anybody that is a fan of anything fantasy, period. It's great. It got me rewatching the original series, Game of Thrones. Now, initially, I was a little late to the Game of Thrones train. I didn't start watching until season 3, and I hadn't read the books up until that point, so I quickly, marathon through seasons 1 and 2 to catch up for season 3, just in time for the Red Wedding, and wow, what a shock to have that be one of my first experiences with Game of Thrones after the only fantasy content that I really had enjoyed up until that point was The Lord of the Rings. Imagine my surprise seeing a storyteller, right, as bold as Mr. Martin is sometimes, to see him do that, the Red Wedding. And, as I was rewatching those early seasons of Game of Thrones with these beautiful, really masterful subversion of expectations, and then I eventually get to the end of Game of Thrones and I see, well, not masterful subversions of expectation, it got me thinking about us as storytellers, right? Because we as DMs, right, we are storytellers, and we want to surprise our players. We want to have those moments where their jaws are dropped, slack-jawed, staring at us as we describe something horrific, amazing, beautiful that they weren't expecting, that they would have never guessed would have happened. But I'll tell you what, there is a right way to subvert expectations as a DM, and there is a very wrong way to subvert expectations as a DM. And I've definitely done both, because apparently, as a dungeon master, scratch that, as a person, I have to learn all of my lessons the hard way. So hopefully I can save you some trouble in your campaigns. Let's go ahead and dive in and talk about what it means to subvert expectations as a storyteller and as a DM. Today, we're going to be breaking down what you should do and what you absolutely should not do when subverting your players' expectations. I'm going to give you 3 specific scenarios where you have the opportunity to subvert expectations frequently during a campaign. I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it and the right way to do it each time. Because here's the deal. Subverting expectations can create incredible moments, but only if you understand that one rule that you can never break. What is that one rule? Well, better keep watching to find out. Before we dive in, if you are finding any of these tips helpful, subscribing does really help the channel. And if you want to see some of these techniques in action, be sure to check out the Crimson Court campaign every Saturday, starting either around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It varies a little bit, but to stay up to date on when those sessions happen, be sure to check out the Roll with Advantage Discord in the description down below. Now, before we move any further, there is something that I want to be super clear about before we get into this. I'm not telling you to railroad your players, and there have been a million videos about railroading and open world and all of that stuff, and that's not what we're here to talk about. If you've been watching any of my videos, you can go back and you can see the way that I feel about railroading and how I don't really think it's a bad thing, because I think that there's a lot of stigma around the word railroading, but really what we're talking about is just a clearly defined narrative that the
players follow along in a straight path, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you still give the players agency.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm not saying that you should manipulate the story to get specific outcomes. Your player's agency is sacred. If you've watched my videos, you know that I believe that. If you've watched me DM, you know that I believe that. But what I'm talking about here is how you present the world and the NPCs in it, not how you control what the players do. Your players should always have the freedom to make choices and face consequences. We're talking more about a narrative framing when it comes to subverting expectations, not controlling the story, specifically the actions that the players take. Remember, these are real people at a table. These aren't characters in a book that you're writing. They're your friends. Hopefully they're your friends, and so their agency and their choices should matter in moments like the ones we're talking about today. First point, don't rob the players of their climactic moments. So we'll go ahead and start with one that I see a lot of DMs make. One I've absolutely made before, and that is stealing the villain kill from your players. So picture this scenario, right? It is the end of the Two Towers in Lord of the Rings, the beginning of the Return of the King. You and your party are chasing an evil wizard for months who has caused so much grief for the entire party, but is maybe connected to one of the characters' backstory. Maybe they've been the source of every problem in the campaign. I don't know, but they have been a very big hindrance in the party, and they are a villain. Eventually, the party storms the wizard's tower, or they approach the wizard's tower, weapon drawn, spells prepared, ready for this epic confrontation, and then this NPC advisor walks in and shanks the wizard. And maybe this is because the wizard is saying very mean things to the advisor, or maybe it's a different reason. Oh, I was working against him the whole time, and the credits roll. Now, in The Lord of the Rings, that works. But if that happens in a D&D campaign, your players are going to feel really cheated, and they should. Here's why that is such a terrible way to subvert expectations. It's because the players have ownership over that confrontation. They have invested hours of gameplay, character development, and emotional energy into reaching this moment. When you take that away, you're not subverting a trope, you're subverting the actual payoff that they've been working towards. It's like, you spend 40 hours, 50 hours, 60, 120 playing Elden Ring or some other video game, and then your significant other or a friend of yours comes in when you're not looking and beats the final boss without you there. Doesn't even ask. That kind of sucks, right? That's what your players experience when you rob them of that final boss encounter. So the right way to do this, I'm going to give you an example from the Crimson Court campaign. So the party got word that a powerful wizard was under siege by some cultists, so they rushed to help. They expected a desperate rescue mission. But when they arrived, the wizard seemed indifferent. "Why are you here?" Zephyros asked, completely unbothered. When they explained why they were there to save him, he just kind of laughed. "Save me? I have teleportation circles in this tower to one of my many estates. If I wanted to leave, I could leave at any time. These cultists, they think they have me trapped." See the difference? The expectation was subverted. There was no epic siege battle, there was no desperate rescue, but the players didn't lose anything that was theirs aside from thinking that they'd have a really big fight on their hands. They still made the choice about how to approach the situation, and they still had agency in what happened next. This subversion was about the NPC's situation, not about taking away a player's moment. The rule boils down to something very simple. You can subvert expectations about the world and how the NPCs behave. You cannot subvert expectations about players' payoffs they've earned through gameplay. Number 2. The agency line that you cannot cross. So let's talk about something that happens at almost every single D&D table. The backstory villain. I mean, you know how it goes. During the session 0 or in those months and weeks before a campaign starts, your rogue player tells you about how their mentor betrayed them and left them for dead. Or maybe the cleric's temple was destroyed by a specific warlord. These backstory elements are threads in your campaign. The players get invested. They want that confrontation. They want to look their enemy in the eyes and get that resolution. But here's what you don't do, all right? You don't have that villain die off screen. You don't have another NPC get revenge on behalf of the player, and for the love of whatever deities you observe, do not subvert the expectation by making the villain not actually that bad without giving the player a meaningful choice in how to respond. You might be noticing a little bit of a through line here. So I'm going to use Game of Thrones for this example as a good subversion versus a bad subversion in terms of something that a character is doing or expecting. So we have Ned Stark, right? He dies at the end of season 1. This is a really good subversion because it subverts our expectations about the type of story that we're watching. We expect either an honorable hero to win because of honor, or we expect him to at least to be able to go north to the wall to be with Jon, right? But instead, we get the honorable hero dies because of that honor and because the world is cruel. It teaches us something about the world, that honor and honorable men can die in this place, regardless of how good they might be. But let's compare that to, say, Arya killing the Night King in season 8. I consider that a bad subversion of expectations because it took away from the payoff that characters, Jon and Daenerys specifically, who had been built up for that specific purpose across multiple seasons. The audience felt robbed because of the confrontation they'd been promised. The prince that was promised, the confrontation that was promised, Azor Ahai! You know? One of the things that's really important that we keep in mind, you and me, that's right, lock in, okay, is that D&D is meant to be a fantasy story. And one of the through lines of almost all fantasy stories is, in the end, the good guy wins. Now, in something like A Song of Ice and Fire, that good guy winning might not be a complete and total victory. That might be a Pyrrhic victory for the hero, where it doesn't really feel like a win, but they still come out the other end. If you watch one of my previous videos about the flaw in fiction, it's something that I talk about at length, where we know the good guy is going to win, but it's about the process of getting there. And if over the process of that story, we set up so many things for the player or for the audience, right? In D&D, those two things are one and the same. And then at the last minute, we take that away from them. Well, of course, that's not gonna feel very good. And there's not gonna be a lot of fulfillment there. So that's why that particular instance is something we don't wanna do, right? We don't wanna steal those things, pull the rug out from underneath our players in the last moment and have some NPC kill that big bad evil guy instead of the player characters themselves. Or even have another PC kill this villain from a player's backstory. It just doesn't feel good. It's not a subversion that really helps anything. It probably just hurts your players' feelings because they say, well, I really like that. I really wanted to be the one to kill the warlord that burned down my temple, but at least he's dead. Okay, yeah, sure. They can roll with it, but it's not great. So how do you do this in D&D then? I mean, you can absolutely subvert backstory expectations, but you should do it in ways that give the players more agency, not less. Let's say your fighter's mentor betrayed them. The wrong subversion is to have the party show up or have that fighter show up and somebody else has already killed them. The right subversion? Maybe the party tracks them down, the mentor is dying of some unrelated illness, or maybe they're genuinely remorseful and want to make amends. Or maybe they reveal the fighter's parents were actually the villains and the betrayal was justified. All of these subvert expectations of the simple revenge story, but they give the player the choice in how to respond. Do they grant forgiveness? Do they still seek revenge against a dying parent? Do they grapple with new information about their past? I mean, that's the player's choice. They have ownership there. Your job is to provide unexpected complications, not unexpected solutions. The players are the ones who are meant to provide the solutions. A great example of this in media would be the Southern Raiders episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender in Book 3, when Katara goes with Zuko to try and find the man that killed her mother. That's a great one, where we expect this absolutely vile human being that is just a monster, but instead we get some pathetic old man who begs and weeps for his life at the first sight of challenge. That's a great example of subverting expectations. And as long as you keep in mind that it's the player's job to decide the solution, not yours, then you're golden, bucko. The last thing that we're going to talk about is quest objectives. Subverting the how, not the why. All right, we come to our final example. This one is where I think a lot of DMs get nervous about subverting anything at all. Your players hear about a village being attacked by gnolls. They rush to help. Classic D&D quest, right? Here's the bad subversion. They arrive and all the villagers are already dead. Quest over, there's nothing they could have done, there's no clues for them to find. Boom, done. This feels really terrible and is not very fun because you made their choice to help meaningless. Here's another bad subversion. They arrive and another adventuring party has already killed the gnolls. Well, thanks anyway. Well, why did you ever present this quest in the first place? These, in isolation, right, in a vacuum, are bad because they remove all player agency retroactively. The players made a choice to help the village, and you're telling them that choice didn't matter. Remember the Crimson Court example that I gave from earlier? That's the right way to do this. Give the quest, rescue the wizard from the siege, but the subversion was, the wizard doesn't actually need rescuing. But the key to this is, it didn't end the quest, it complicated it. Now my players had a new question. Why is this wizard letting himself be besieged? What is he studying about these cultists? Should we still fight the cultists? Should we question why this wizard isn't more concerned? The subversion opened up more choices for my players, not fewer. So in the two examples I gave before about an adventuring party and the village already being dead, if the village is already dead, let them collect some clues. This is probably not going to be the only village that the gnolls raid. Are they working for somebody else? Maybe there are a couple of dead gnolls. They have brands on them. Maybe they have really nice steel weapons instead of the bronze weapons that they have. Somebody's been funding upgrades for these gnolls. Okay, that's a question. We can go start asking questions in town, see if maybe there's a blacksmith that is selling weapons, or if there's somebody coming in buying weapons. Ooh, that's interesting. Or maybe there's an adventuring party that has already killed the gnolls and deflected them back. How did they hear about this before all of you? Did they just happen to be in town? Or maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe this is, I don't know, like embezzlement from the Adventurers Guild, where they release gnolls into the wild after capturing them to attack a village, send in some of their adventurers to kill the gnolls and be like, oh, we're the heroes, give us all your money, village. And then they just keep doing it. And maybe the adventurers are smart. I don't know, but you can see how if it opens up more questions, or if there's reason behind it, it's okay. The point I'm trying to make is when you tell your players to go do one thing, and then you say, oh, actually, never mind, it's solved, and you don't give them anything else, yeah, that's gonna suck, dude. Duh. Don't do that. Do not do that. Even if you think it's really funny or really clever to waste your players' time, you know, because they waste yours. If that's the type of dynamic you have as a player in DM, you maybe need to talk to your group, or maybe you guys just shouldn't be playing D&D together. Okay. So that's the important part, right? You think you're doing one thing, but then the situation turns out differently. But the players still have agency in how they respond. That's a secret sauce right there. That's what they put in the Krabby Patty. All right, that's the stuff that makes playing D&D so delicious, is when, oh, this is a little bit more complicated than I originally thought. Okay. Just as a quick note, if you are getting any value from these breakdowns, don't forget to subscribe. There's going to be a lot more videos like this in the future, and of course, you'll always get updated when a new Crimson Court session comes out, if you do subscribe. So, what this all boils down to, and I'm going to be very clear here, you can subvert expectations about the world, the NPCs, and the situations your players find themselves in. You cannot and should not subvert expectations about the payoffs your players have earned through their choices and gameplay. Players have ownership over confrontation with their backstory villains, the resolution of quests they have actively pursued, combat encounters they've prepared for, revenge they've been seeking, relationships they've been building. Players do not have ownership over how NPCs behave, whether situations are what they initially seem, the complex problems they encounter, the motivation of antagonists, the state of the world when they arrive somewhere. You don't want to subvert expectations by taking things away from them. Subvert by giving them more complicated choices to make, not fewer. Look, we all want shocking moments at our tables. We all want our players to tell stories about the time we completely surprised them. We want them to feel something more than just, well, I'm gonna roll my dice and hope that I hit. We want them to actually feel something when they play in our games. A video that I want to do here in the future is one about emotional storytelling and how so many DMs could really have engaging plot lines like you find in God of War Ragnarok, The Last of Us, The Witcher 3, these emotional storylines where you care about the people and the NPCs. We can all have that. It's not that hard, but there's a few simple things that we don't do. So if you do want to see that, make sure you subscribe to see that, and that will hopefully come out soon. But in our games, we want them to remember them fondly. We want them to be surprised. But the difference between a good surprise and a bad one is simple. Good surprises give the players more interesting choices to make, and bad surprises take choices away from them. I've said it so many times, but I have been in a classroom before. I have been a teacher before. I know that you need to say the same thing 9 times over, and hopefully half the class will hear it by that point. The Ned Stark moment works because it teaches you about the world. The Arya Stark Night King moment doesn't work because it robs the characters of their earned payoff. In D&D, this matters way more because your players aren't just watching, they are active participants in the moment. Don't subvert their participation. Subvert their assumptions about how the world works and let them respond however they want. So with that, that ends it. I'm not exactly sure what video is going to come out next. Probably the emotional storytelling one, because I have the script written for it. I'm just kind of mulling it over a bit more, using examples from a favorite musical of mine, Next to Normal, and Claire Obscura Expedition 33, to talk about how those two stories are great to pull from when you think about delivering really impactful emotional storytelling to your players. But I don't know, if there's something you want to hear more about, leave it in the comments below. I'd be happy to help you out with whatever issue you're running into at your table. I think that it's really useful to hear from other DMs about what they're going through and what they're experiencing, because we learn from each other's mistakes. And trust me, I have made plenty to know that learning from others is always a good idea. So with that, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next one. That's all I got. Bye.